So as the transfer window is now open, I've picked out one player from every Championship club who I think you should be doing absolutely everything to keep hold of this summer. If you agree with my picks, let me know in the comments down below. Leave a like and do subscribe if you go on to enjoy. But without any further ado, let's hop into this one. Birmingham, I'm going to go for Joe Bellingham. We already saw him get a couple of opportunities in the Blues first team towards the end of this season. I think going into next season, there's definitely a place in that Birmingham side for a player as up and coming as Bellingham. There have already been links to Jude's younger brother, and both Liverpool and Dortmund have been linked with the move for the 16-year-old. But from Birmingham's perspective, I think it would make sense to get a full season out of him in the Championship, bump up that price tag even more, and not sell now at a cut price while he's just 16. Blackburn Rovers, I'm actually going to go for John Buckley. I'm not going to go for the obvious one here in Ben Brereton Diaz. I actually think that with his contract situation at Blackburn, him now heading into that final year, it would probably make sense from their perspective to go ahead and cash in on Brereton Diaz and use that money to go ahead and reinvest and rebuild the rest of the squad with. Buckley caught my eye last year though, and I think particularly with Rothwell's departure this summer, more of the creative onus is going to fall on Buckley, who had a really flourishing year last time for Blackburn, scoring 3 goals, getting 7 assists. I think he should be a player that they're looking to do everything they can to keep hold of for the foreseeable future. Blackpool, I think it's got to be Marvin Ekpiteta, really. A few people may point towards Josh Bowler, but similar to the Ben Brereton Diaz situation at Blackburn, I think it would probably make sense for Blackpool to go ahead and cash in on Bowler. Coming off the season he's just had, now heading into the last 12 months of his contract at Blackpool. Cash in while Bowler's hot and go ahead and reinvest that money into the rest of the squad. Ekpiteta, though, is a different story for me. I think he's absolutely crucial to Blackpool's defensive solidity, especially with them now going in a new direction without Critchley for next season. Bristol City, I've got to go for Andy Weimann realistically. 22 goals as well as 10 assists last season for Bristol City. We've already seen them strengthening their back line, which was certainly needed after the amount of goals they shipped last season. But if they manage to keep this forward three together once again going into next season, then we could be in for a bit of an exciting ride at Ashton Gate. I do feel as if the right offer does come in for Semenyo, if we start to get into the sort of high teens, then Bristol City may be tempted to sell him at the age he's currently at. They'll probably get a considerable amount for him. But Andy Weimann, there should be no questions that Bristol City should be doing everything they can to keep hold of him, because he is guaranteed goals for them, isn't he? Burnley, I'm going to go for Nathan Collins. With both Ben Mee and James Tarkowski leaving this summer, I think it's important that they have some continuity with their back line going into next season. I think a player like Nathan Collins will be absolutely pivotal to that. We've already seen a few Premier League links to the Burnley centre-half. You'll know on the channel if you've watched it for a while how much I actually rate Collins. I thought it was a brilliant pickup from Burnley when they got him from Stoke. Still really young as well. I think he could really take his game to the next level and learn quite a bit off new manager Vincent Kompany as well. So yeah, no doubt in my mind Burnley need to do everything they can to keep hold of him. Cardiff City, I'm going to go for Joe Ralls. Now, as of recording, Cardiff have offered him a new contract, but as of right now, he's not going to head and signed any paperwork or anything to that note. Cardiff have released a lot of their experienced players this summer. I do think that was probably the right call. They were sort of winding down and taking up a lot on the wage bill. But while that's happened, and there are a lot of moving plates at Cardiff this summer in terms of the ins and outs we've already seen in that club, I do think it's important that they keep a little bit of continuity within that squad, and I think that Ralls especially really came into his own in the second half of last season. I think he'll be a character who they should be looking to keep around. Coventry, I'm going to go for Victor Gyökeres. 20 goal a season strikers or thereabouts are absolute gold dust in the Championship, and Coventry pretty much have that in Gyökeres. He hit 17 from last season. I was sort of 50-50 between him and Gustavo Hamer. I'm sure there'll be plenty of interest in both players come the summer. We've already seen one attempt knocked back from Middlesbrough for Victor Gyökeres, but the way that Coventry will want to go from strength to strength next season, I think Gyökeres' goals will be absolutely pivotal to that. Huddersfield, I think I have to go for Lewis O'Brien, don't I? I'm not really all too sure about the probabilities of Huddersfield actually going on and keeping O'Brien. We've already seen several Premier League clubs sniffing around him, most notably Leeds and most recently West Ham as well. For me, he was one of, if not the best central midfielders in the Championship from last season, and should they lose him, I mean, that's a massive void they have to fill in that side then, isn't it? Hull City keen Lewis Potter. Now Hull have been linked to an array of exciting talents at this point in time, but potentially the best bit of business that Hull could actually do this summer is keeping hold of Lewis Potter, their prized asset. He showed last season just how versatile he was in the vast array of positions he took up on the pitch. 12 goals, 3 assists in his first full championship season as well. I think he'll only go on and get better heading into next season, and he'll have a crucial point to play in Hull moving up the league table. Luton Town, Elijah Adebayo. I'm sure that Luton fans will be hoping that the departure of Cal Naismith won't be a little bit of a trendsetter for some other high-profile exits heading out of Kenilworth Road this summer. I would say that Adebayo is the vital player and that they should be doing everything to go ahead and keep hold of him, like we were mentioning with Coventry and Gyökeres. Strikers like Adebayo, especially for teams like Luton with their sort of budgets and what they'll be going into next season with, players like him are absolute gold dust. I'd back Luton in going ahead and replacing him if he does leave, but maybe not with a striker who immediately hits the ground running. 16 goals, 4 assists. Yeah, he'll be sorely missed if he does leave. Middlesbrough, Marcus Tavernier. I think that under Chris Wilder especially, it really started to feel like Tavernier was properly gelling into this Borough side, and last season was one of their most important players. We've already seen interest in Tavernier from Bournemouth especially. It seems like they're likely to go in with a concrete bid for him in the next few days and weeks. However, Middlesbrough are in quite a unique situation really, because in the usual circumstances you'd say that, okay, a championship club would be sensible to go ahead and cash in on one of their prized assets and go ahead and reinvest that money into the rest of the squad. But Borough are likely to get a massive chunk of money coming their way for Jed Spence, which does then give them a little bit more bargaining power to perhaps keep hold of Tavernier this summer. Millwall, I'm going to go for Jake Cooper. I believe he is now heading into the final year of his Millwall contract, which I'm sure is something that the club will be keen to go ahead and tie him down to a new long-term contract. Really consistent performer from his years at the Den, and I think that going into next season he'll be as important as ever. Norwich City, Teemu Pukki. Pukki last season in the Premier League was one of the few Norwich players that could realistically walk out of that season with his head held high. 11 goals, 3 assists, and I think that my prediction for Norwich next season is largely going to be based on whether or not they go ahead and keep Teemu Pukki. The guy scores goals for fun in the Championship. 26 last time, 29 the time before that. Those goals are almost irreplaceable without going out and splashing a huge chunk of cash in the transfer market. So for me, Norwich needs to do absolutely everything they can to go ahead and keep hold of Pukki. Preston North End, Emile Rees. I think that it is becoming increasingly unlikely that we're not going to get Cameron Archer back for another season on loan, with him continuing to smash it for the England under-21s at the moment, and with how many other clubs are currently interested in the Villa youngster. So that goes ahead and puts more emphasis on the goals that Rees is going to need to come up with next season. 16 last time around, as well as 5 assists to boot. He went from strength to strength last season, and I think that next season, hopefully, we get to see an even more refined Emile Rees, who kicks on to that 20 goal mark in the Championship perhaps. Queen's Park Rangers, Chris Willock. It was no real surprise to see QPR's creativity drying up in the second half of the season, which coincided with Willock being out at the end of the season. I'm really quite excited to see what Michael Beale is able to do with this QPR side and how he's able to sort of tactically shape them. But one player who's going to be absolutely central to everything they do is Chris Willock, and they need to go ahead and do everything they can to keep hold of him. 7 goals, 11 assists, the guy's different gravy. Reading, Lucas João. Now Lucas João is heading into the final 12 months of his contract at Reading, so some people may argue that it would make sense from their perspective to go ahead and cash in on João right now while they can still get some money from him, but I'd actually maybe even argue the opposite. I don't think that Reading have the resources to go ahead and replace Lucas João should he go ahead and leave this summer, and for me, João is absolutely the defining factor in this Reading side next season and could well be the difference between survival and relegation. And João and the goals that he can come up with and Championship status for another year next season is worth way more to Reading than any sort of potential transfer fee they could get for a 12-month contracted Lucas João. So yeah, for me, João, especially with Swift departing already this summer, Reading need to go ahead and keep hold of him. Rotherham, I'm going to go for Ben Wiles. Now, I do think that it's important that they keep together the vast majority of this core for next season and then go ahead and add on top of that. But I do accept that it is tough, particularly if some tempting offers do come in. And Wiles is a player who I am really excited about. I think he will continue to go from strength to strength next season, coming off the back of a really successful campaign in League One. 8 goals, 7 assists, still only 23 as well. And we have already heard about some potential rumblings of some clubs who have been linked to him. Sheffield United, I'm going to go for Sander Berge. Now, Sheffield United did really well in the first place to keep him around for last season, never mind this upcoming season. I certainly don't think he'll be short of suitors, but if they manage to get him consistently on the pitch for a full season, he showed what he could do, especially in the second half of last season in Heckingbottom's setup, with Gibbs White no longer being there. He could be an absolutely pivotal presence in this setup. He only started 24 championship matches last season, so if you manage to get him, you know, starting 40 or so matches in the Championship, a player as quality as Berge could absolutely make all the difference. Stoke City, Harry Suter. He was sorely missed for Stoke in the second half of last season as he was out through injury. He's continuing that rehabilitation right now, and Stoke fans, I'm sure, will be more than eager to get him back out on the pitch going into next season. In the first half of the season, Suter was, for me, probably even I would go as far to say the best centre-half in the Championship. He was an absolute man-mountain in that back three for Stoke. I think because of that long injury that he's coming back from, Stoke are more than likely to go ahead and keep hold of him for this next upcoming season, but he was playing at such a level at the start of last season that I certainly wouldn't be surprised if a few teams are sniffing around. Sunderland, of course, I'm going to go for Ross Stewart. It is the obvious answer, but he's coming off the back of the season of his life, 26 goals in League One. It's important that Sunderland keep hold of this core coming up to the Championship, and they go ahead and add on top of that. We've already spoken about Ross Stewart in some previous episodes of the Championship Rumour Roundup in terms of some other clubs that have been mentioned in conversations with him, but yeah, there's no doubt that Sunderland will be doing everything they can to keep hold of him. Swansea City, Michael Obafemi. Now, there were a few names that I could have thrown into the hat for Swansea here, you know, Joel Perreault, Jamie Patterson, Matt Grimes, but Obafemi absolutely caught fire for Swansea in the second half of last season. Came up with 12 goals, but consistently over a full season in this setup that we've seen him being utilised in the second half of the season, I think he could absolutely catch fire, and there's no doubt in my mind that he will be up and around the 20 goal mark next season should Swansea go ahead and keep him, because I think that Brighton have already been one club mentioned as a potential link for Obafemi. Watford, I'm actually going to go for a returning loanee in Philip Zinkernagel. I really think that he deserves his opportunity for Watford next season. They should be doing everything they can to go ahead and keep hold of him, because I think that in that number 10 role, like he showed at Nottingham Forest last season on that loan move, he could be absolutely pivotal to Rob Edwards' plans for next season. 6 goals, 7 assists. I wouldn't be massively surprised if Forest did look to go back in for Zinkernagel on a permanent basis, but for me, I think Watford should absolutely keep him in the picture for next season. West Brom, I'm going to go for Connor Townsend. Despite only popping up with 2 assists last season, he was actually the most creative player in that West Brom squad. He created more chances than anyone else in that West Brom team, and it was only really down to West Brom's poor finishing of their forward line, really, the fact that Townsend only picked up 2 assists in the end. But I thought he was one of their probably more unsung heroes of the last campaign. I think it's going to be important to keep players like him around for next season and this rebuild that is obviously on the way for West Brom. Finishing with Wigan Athletic, who I'm going to go with Callum Lang. I think he will be arguably their most important player going into next season, actually. He was absolutely prolific for them last season in League One, 15 goals, 7 assists, and he is probably the player that I'm most excited about in terms of seeing how he adapts to the Championship next season. The biggest advantage that Wigan have when it comes to Callum Lang is I believe he's tied down to a fairly long-term contract until the summer of 2025, so Wigan have all the cards in their court in that aspect, but I'm sure there'll be a couple of rumblings about some potential transfer rumours with how well he did in League One last season. There we have it though, guys. There was one player from each Championship club who I think your club needs to do absolutely everything to go ahead and keep hold of them this summer. Do you agree with my selections? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, if you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular Championship content. Thanks for watching though, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.